Welcome to our first kind of podcast. I don't know what to call it, actually. We've had a few podcasts. This is our sort of second interview, but it's just going to be us talking about some of the latest news events in a little bit more of an informal setting. So let us know what you guys think about that. Um, because sometimes I think it's nice to just chat through some of this stuff without like necessarily presenting it with videos like we normally do, or without a strict kind of interview where we interview people. So there's been a lot of
Very cool.
developments right now with OpenAI, NVIDIA, Elon Musk, and it seems like the race for AGI is really heating up. Today, both Elon and Sam Altman made some pretty staggering announcements about the scale of compute that they're planning to build. Sam Altman is even talking about something that he didn't use these words, but it's a machine that builds the machine. So we'll talk about that because it's really shaping up to be something huge. The scale is just absolutely incredible. But I guess to start us off with, there's some positive and happy news. I think, Dylan, you uncovered it on your show. Apparently there's one group of people that are really benefited by ChatGPT and AI, and I'm very, very happy to hear that.
Yeah, we can start there. That'd be great. I mean, I will say it does feel like this week is red hot with how much competition there is. I mean, it was always a numbers game where there were billions and billions, but recently it was just, now it feels like the whole world is like paranoid and every country is like just doing everything. But yeah, we'll dive into that. But beforehand, I guess the good news for people who have ADHD, which seems to be more and more of the population. It turns out ChatGPT and some of these LLMs are giving them disproportionately more benefits than people expected. So as amazing as LLMs are for the average worker, new study showing that for the people who are not neurotypical, it is giving them so many more tools to be productive, to stay organized, to communicate with other employees. And that's, their satisfaction is going up quite a bit.
Yeah. And I mean, I can attest to this. I got diagnosed with ADHD later in life.
You did
And
too?
yeah. Yeah. And
Oh, really?
I'm glad it's not obvious. I'm so happy that this is
Yeah, I would have never thought.
the fact that I forget what question I'm answering halfway through the question at like half of our interviews.
Yeah, well,
Or I
it
forget.
takes one to know one. Yeah, I got diagnosed too when I was a kid. I was like 20 years old when I first got prescribed Adderall, and for
Oh,
like over
really?
a decade I was on it, and then got off it just like cold turkey a few years ago, and my life has been so much more messy since then. I do like life, but it isn't the same, man.
Interesting. But okay, but it wasn't like a big hard transition. It was just like a little bit
No,
messy, but
it was pretty big car transition.
oh,
You mean
okay.
getting off it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was not. So okay, so I don't know like why this is so crazy, but there really was like a whole different personality almost that I had. I felt
Hmm.
like I worked as like I coded, I worked on like statistical problems. I had a much more technical job for 10 years working at Zappos, and it was like and at startups and doing things, and the kind of focus to like sit there and be excited about, like just learning Python and building apps is just ridiculously different than how my brain is now. Like I just can't sit there and care that much about how a function is built and how a variable is changing as it goes through like loop after loop after loop and tracking down things. So I don't know. It is a different world. I still think this is a world where you don't have to play into that to be happy, but it's different. I'm truly not as productive. I hate to say it.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's one really interesting book that I want to read, and actually, I think the author was on some big podcast recently. So the book is called Blitzed, and
Huh.
apparently, so wow, did we? So, ladies and gentlemen, this show is by two people with ADHD, so you can tell. I don't know what we were talking about before. This is not AI. I guess Blitz is just about World War II Germany. Apparently, a lot of the high command they were on. Blitzed, like
Oh,
blitz, but yeah, like they're blitzed. Um,
like
and
that?
so a lot of the German high command apparently were on the chemical behind ADHD medicine. I'm not going to say what, but as sort of they were talking about why, like the things that sort of like the downstream effects of that. So
Yeah, you know what? I think I
anyway,
heard about that book too.
I kind of want to read it. It sounds interesting. I don't know
Who
why.
recommended that? Was like, is that Peter Thiel that recommended that book? Like, I feel like somebody mentioned this like a couple of years ago.
I mean, Joe Rogan, I feel, mentioned it multiple times back in the days,
Mm.
because he always references like with Hitler, like rocking back and forth at when they have like stuff, he's just like doing all this sorts of weird stuff, and then he was wondering why. And I guess this book explains a lot. I didn't read it yet, but it sounds like it goes into some of the issues and some of the things that were happening.
Yeah, well, the people who are neuroatypical, and they are saying that the cognitive load that they have to keep in their head to socialize and function is much less, particularly with tasks involving writing, organization, meetings, and communications. And when it comes to creativity, that gives them more time to kind of do what people with ADHD do best, which is like kind of think outside the box, find new ideas, um, be more like the R&D inside of a
Mhm.
company than the organizers. So seems like it's kind of cool.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, my social anxiety definitely went down when I got the proper medication because I felt like I wasn't trying to catch up to the conversation or I was like lagging behind. I felt present. And so that whole anxiety just like melted and I just feel present in every conversation. My mind's not elsewhere. Um,
What
but
about
anyways,
short form media? Do you get caught in it a lot, or can you
I'm
avoid it?
very careful. I can't like TikTok is I don't touch that stuff, man. Especially like if it's kind of late at night or like later in the evenings, I don't touch it. Just because, yeah, I've like woken up out of a stupor, like, oh my God, it's like 3 hours. What am
I
I
know
doing?
who hasn't.
Oh man.
But
Well,
you play
probably
video
people without,
games.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do. Probably normal people haven't. I'm sure some portion of our audience is like, what are they talking about?
Yeah, because I'm getting caught. I waited for a while, but now I am kind of caught in short form media, and I just like feel so crappy afterwards. I catch myself after a half hour, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, and I'm just like, no, like that was not the old version of you, Dylan. Like you wouldn't have wasted that much time.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like a whole different thing. And from what I understand, it seems like it was a hunter gene back in the days. So it's basically that novelty seeking, wanting new stimulus, being bored with the same old, right? Because you can imagine yourself back in the hunter gatherer society, right? Everybody's weaving baskets or whatever, and
Hmm.
everybody's happy weaving baskets, and they've been taught to weave baskets by the previous generations. And then there's one or two people that are like, I can't do this. I did 3 baskets. I am done. I can't. I'm gonna run off into the jungle
Right.
but they might find something new, something novel. So it's that not thrill seeking, but novelty seeking gene to where you just get bored with repetition faster.
Yeah. Do you feel preyed upon by the tech companies? I mean, do you feel like they've figured this out, harnessed it, and use it, or do you feel like I don't know. It's just like video games are just meant to be fun, and we're responsible and have to be people who just stay away from these things. It's a free
I
market.
I don't have a problem with that side of it. I hate pop-ups and various disruptions when I'm trying to interact with the computer screen because I tend to move pretty fast when I'm interacting with the computer screen. Because if I'm on, like, I want to move fast. That's probably a trick that I've learned to really like zero in and focus. So if there's a pop-up or there's some stupid thing that distracts me that's on screen, that tends to break me out of my flow. So I tend to get angrier than I think that I should when things like that show up. You know what I
You mean
mean?
those little things like get a coupon, put your email in here? That drives you nuts?
Or even like, especially like one of the reasons why I don't use Apple is like if they need you to do something like sign something or log into something, like it'll like that thing will hover at the, like wiggle at the bottom of it. And it's not going to stop wiggling just every few seconds. It's like the Chinese water
Yeah.
torture or and you're just like, I will break. And the thing is, if you click on it, then you have to agree to something. It's not, you can't just, no. Um,
Yeah.
anyways, wow, we went on a tangent, but
All right. Let's talk about this. We're talking about the race heating up. it feels like it's become geopolitical recently. It feels like Trump has been almost like parading around all of the tech titans, all of the Apple, Microsoft CEOs, minus Elon Musk, through Europe, and then also, it seems like what if you ever catch any of like the Chinese news, they're just pushing how important it is to their country at like full speed right now, and stocks are like going crazy. Ellison was a little bit richer than Elon Musk for a few hours because so much money was being poured into building servers. That's all for AI, which is all through Oracle for OpenAI and Sam Altman. So, yeah, what's your thoughts about how much this is all heating up and how OpenAI and Microsoft and everybody is kind of growing in this ecosystem?
It's absolutely incredible. So yeah, a few months ago, I know they were in Dubai, I believe, and everybody was there: Jensen, Altman, Elon, Trump, and his cabinet, and everybody else, and they're talking to the royalty, the people that are the higher ups in the kingdom. And it sounds like they want to build a lot of cooperation and infrastructure and stuff like that. Now, since then, of course, Elon Musk launched Colossus 2, the biggest sort of single supercluster of compute, so to speak. And it's weird because they're all measuring it in different ways. So some of them are measured in flops, some of them measure them in the number of GPUs. Now all of a sudden I feel like they've switched to measuring it in gigawatts. So which actually gigawatts I think is probably a little bit easier to compare apples to apples. And so it's kind of funny because in the Back to the Future movie from back in days, right, you had that Doc Brown, and he's like, we need 1.21 gigawatts to travel back to the future, and we can't do that without nuclear power.
Yeah,
Apparently gigawatts.
I feel like time travel is where this all ends up, so we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but interestingly, so gigawatts, apparently that J is a, you can say it that way. That's the proper Greek pronunciation or whatever it is. But
oh,
interestingly,
are you the
so
kind of guy that says GIF or GIF?
I always have to think about
Exposed.
which one's the right one, because it's like, because you get yelled at either way, I feel like. So you're supposed to say GIF, right? Or
I don't
GIF.
know. I do say GIF, but I don't know what you're supposed to say. I'm a rebel like that.
Oh, so wait, so which one's the rebel one?
I don't know. I just use GIF. I just
GIF.
felt it's always been what I've heard. I feel like people use GIF. I'm like, what are you talking about? It sounds like peanut butter.
Yeah. Whatever. But the point is, Elon Musk. So his Colossus 2 is like 1.1 gigawatts, right? And in order to power it, they had to like hook up a power plant that's across a state border. They had to hook up a bunch of whatever, like temporary generators in order to power everything up. The local governments had to give them a 12-month permit-free ability to run everything, right? So there's like, and they managed to do it in 6 months, but it was like unheard of how fast he does it. It's that whole speed running factorial thing that he jokes about. There's some, he's able to make this stuff happen super fast. That's 1 gigawatt. Now, OpenAI and NVIDIA, they're talking about 10 gigawatts, right? So 10x that amount that they're going to try to deploy. So the question is where, how, and then today on one of the news shows, there's an interview with them and they're saying we're 3 orders of magnitude away from where we need to be. And Elon's saying the same thing. He's like, he's going to be the one to launch the first 10 gigawatt cluster, the first 100 gigawatt cluster, and the first, what is it, terawatt cluster. So, so they're like, yeah, man.
I know. And I mean, I know it seems weird, but if you just think of these orders of magnitude growing, we're talking like 2030, the most insane amount of electricity and compute the world could ever imagine. And, we're going to live hopefully much longer than that. Like that's how you get to a Dyson sphere where you're just like, oh, let me just cap the whole sun and suck the energy out of it. It just, I don't know where it ends, man, but it's not going to stop in 2030 either.
Yeah. And a lot of people are saying that this might be like the bubble is about to pop, and this is their attempt to just try to keep juicing the stock price, keep the investments going. And I mean, certainly, I guess that's possible.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I talked to the SVIC guys yesterday. So Jordan, I think, said one interesting thing. We were on a live stream I was on a live stream with them, and then somebody else joined. Um, but he was like, look at where they're investing their money. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way of looking at it, right? Because it's one thing if billionaires and investors and CEOs go on talk shows and they say something, but they might be buying and selling stuff that sends a different message behind the scenes, right? But the thing is, so Sam Altman has been investing in energy. So he's got, I think it's called like Okla, and then he's got his Helion Energy, I think it's called.
So
Um,
that's so yeah. So it seems like energy might be the real growth market,
yeah, and then
which makes
NVIDIA,
sense.
yeah, NVIDIA is investing energy through like a subsidiary. Bill Gates is. So it's like they're expecting the demand for energy to go up. Goldman Sachs thinks that just the demand for energy for these data centers is just going to skyrocket. So it's like,
Yeah.
are they all just wrong?
Well, it makes sense to me that there would be a little bit of too quick excitement in the stock price, right? Like if Oracle says, "Okay, I'm going to invest 100 billion into OpenAI," and then OpenAI is like, "I'm going to give 100 billion dollars to NVIDIA and buy a bunch of their chips," and then NVIDIA is like, "Oh, we just made a deal with Oracle to like put all of our chips inside their servers," and you're like, "Wait." Everybody's stock went up, and the same $100 billion circled all the way from Larry Ellison back to Larry Ellison. So it seems to me that could be a little bit hyped, just because
Mhm.
that news cycle can travel at the speed of X or Twitter, and the realistic implementation of all of that takes not forever, but 6 months, 8 months, a year and a half to like build all of that and put it in place. So it will come, but yeah, it might be slightly hyped for the moment, but in the long run, it still seems like a trend that's inevitably going to get incredibly huge.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if you think about like the dot com bubble and all that stuff that happened back in the days, that they weren't wrong on where tech is going to end up, right? Because the biggest companies right now are all tech. It's all the company. All this stuff that we thought was going to happen did happen.
Right.
It's just the stock, the valuations got ahead of everything. Then they crashed. Then they came back. But it's like that's why I'm always trying to separate like what like let's are we talking about prices of assets or are we talking about kind of like where stuff is heading long term?
Do you think
Um,
OpenAI becomes bigger than Microsoft?
so that's a whole interesting thing because recently I guess there was an article where Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, saying that he's haunted by I guess he's referencing Digital Equipment Core, their downfall. And so he's saying he's going to reinvent Microsoft before AI does that same thing to him, to Microsoft. Um, Meanwhile, Elon Musk is launching what do you call it? Macro hard,
Oh yeah,
macro hard, right? So
micro hard.
opposite.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, somebody's like, oh, the first product should be called Doors, right? Like Microsoft Windows, macro hard doors, whatever.
I have not heard that, but thanks for the
But
meme.
yeah, but so it seems like there's a little bit of a concern that AI, coding, all that stuff will undermine a lot of those businesses. And that's kind of like what Elon Musk was saying is that at some point, like, why have software that you pay for software as a service when you can have AI that just spins up everything for you automatically? Like, as soon as you need it, you need
Right.
some functionality. Here's the code that makes that happen. So what happens to Microsoft when that happens? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So okay, but if you think through it, okay. So let's even imagine that we have Grok's 9 or something, and it is actually capable of spinning up an entire operating system, just like Wes Roth, the operating system secured specifically for your home and your needs. It still seems like it's got to I don't know, like it seems like where Microsoft is with a user base And the ability to sort of transition business over to it will still have a certain kind of value that is tough. Even if the product works really well, you've got to get everybody to sort of re-sign up for it and kind of rethink about their workflows. When agents run companies, why wouldn't they go to micro hard to build
Yeah.
their stuff? Because they don't need to fit into a current system. But as humans are still in charge, it seems like Microsoft's got a bit more runway to like slowly introduce AI into that ecosystem. But I do not envy Satya Nadella, because if he figures out a way to completely lean out that company and transition into a new world, which is possible with how much compute they've built and the kind of tools they have, but they would have to do something that's pretty unheard of in the history of business, which is, moving hundreds of thousands of people over to a kind of a new industry, all just slowly, piece by piece, strategically, with all of their different business units. Yeah, that'll be pretty wild. And Sam Altman has sort of the kind of golden pasture to move forward. Same with Elon. So it seems a little bit easier to bet on people rebuilding the new world than it does the older world moving over. But I don't know. It's been pretty good as a CEO so far, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's been great. He's definitely one of the best CEOs, I feel like, in the last whatever decade or however long. Um, a lot of it has been just really sort of capitalizing on everything that Microsoft had, like figuring out how to really make everything work, kind of like extracting the value or whatever. But I mean, because a lot of it was already there, I feel like, and he just like figured out how to like make it profitable, make it work together, stuff like that.
You know what else I forgot about is, now that I think about it, OpenAI, if from what I understand, if they're moving from this nonprofit into a for-profit, Microsoft had to approve the deal, and I believe that they end up with maybe a controlling stake, or at least a really big stake in the company. I think it's valued at 100 billion as of today. So, I mean, if OpenAI gets to a $1 trillion valuation and Microsoft is sitting on 15 or 20% of that, they might be okay with that. You know what I mean? Maybe go off and just do your thing. I mean, Microsoft, I could be wrong, but I think Microsoft owned a huge part of Apple for a long time. Didn't they save Apple when they were like in their worst moments and ended up with 10% stake or something in Apple and made ungodly amounts of money on it over the years?
That sounds right. That sounds, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe Microsoft ends up just owning 10% of Apple and 10% of OpenAI, and then they themselves are also a $3 trillion AI company, and Microsoft stock stays very strong, and that's how this all ends up.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see how that whole thing plays out. Um, and I have no idea what's happening with the transition, right? To be honest, because there was a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of lawsuits. It sounds like Elon did not like the fact that they're trying to transition to for profit. There's a lot of other people that stepped in. There's lawsuits. So has there been any new developments on that?
Not that I know of, but I mean, all we have to do is see what Elon's tweeting about to see like how he feels about that stuff. Yeah, I think that's where we're at now, is that they haven't completed it yet. But with Microsoft on board, I feel like that's just a paperwork issue now. I think there's a very good chance they're not a nonprofit very long, or there's that nonprofit parent that retains that control in the company, but there's a piece of OpenAI that's very much not for profit, and it's going to become a $1 trillion company of its own.
Yeah. And here's what Sam Altman said. I referenced earlier the machine, building the machine or whatever. So he released a blog post on his blog called Abundant Intelligence. So that's the name of the blog post. I have a video coming out about it. I'm going to say later, but the thing is, I don't know when this gets published. So maybe you've already seen it. You've time traveled from the future. With 1.21 gigawatts of power, as you recall. But so keep that number in mind. Here's why. Here's what Sam Altman says. He's saying our vision is simple. We want to create a factory that can produce a gigawatt of new AI infrastructure every week.
Wow.
So, I mean, think about the scale of that. I mean, if we take it at face value, right? Forget for a second, can they do it or not? So it takes a power plant. So that's basically, so 1 gigawatt, that's the output, if I understand correctly, of a standard nuclear reactor. So like a power plant, one reactor produces that much. That's the size of Colossus 2, stage 2. They have their own power plant that supports it. It took them 6 months, and that was, people were saying it's a miracle that they were able to build that in 6 months. That's with all the regulators just backing off and saying, like, you just do whatever you need to, like, we'll back off. Um, so that's how much it took to produce 1 gigawatt. Well, you know what I mean? That's now the measure for data centers, apparently. Elon, or I'm sorry, Sam Altman is saying he wants to create a factory that produces that much of new infrastructure every week. Like, what's your take on that?
Look, if America loses the AI race to China, it's going to be because they were better positioned earlier with all sorts of infrastructure, like mostly nuclear, but also just a much better, kind of more modernized, more organized way to move electricity around the country. So, if regulators in the United States see it as something that they can step back from because it's of national security, and Elon and all these guys have talked to Trump and just got what they need to just make this happen, why not? I believe when Americans really get going, and like we have kind of the industrial might in the past, if we can kind of get behind something, I think it could be done. But I don't know. I mean, logistically, I know so little about how these things come together. It seems to me like thousands of moving parts would be hard to organize, but um I don't know. The Memphis supercluster threw me off. Like, as soon as I realized that could be done, even though other people say they can do it, it actually got done when Elon did it. It makes me think that now other people know that it can be done, and something
Right.
about the way he did it can be taught.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, Grok, that's kind of like what I've been saying. It does seem like the thing is, OpenAI was one of the first people to kind of announce that, hey, there's this thing that's happening with RL, and they were the ones that said that eventually the amount of compute that went to pre-training, the amount of, because in the beginning, like GPT-4, GPT-4o was all pre-training. They didn't really have any reinforcement learning. Um, Nothing scaled up on the back end. So post-training, there was like RLHF, but there wasn't like RL like we do for these reasoning models. That came with O1 was the first one, right? O1 was
Right.
O1 preview or whatever. Um, and so they kind of predicted that that's going to flip, and that RL compute is going to be much bigger than pre-trained compute. And then Elon and Grok with Grok 4, that was like the first time we saw what happens when you take that much power, that much hardware, and throw it at RL with that model. And Grok is really good at a lot of different things. The thing is, he made it like, because he's like speed running through all the stages and he's catching up. So yeah, it might be unpolished in some ways, but I mean, it's remarkable in a lot of ways, because obviously something that he's doing is really working. And
Well,
it's,
well, I will say so. Anastasia in Tech did a great video. She does a sort of like half-hour breakdown last week of what it takes to build the TSMC factory in
oh,
Arizona. And it what blew my mind about this is like as the United States, we're pretty lucky that TSMC is willing to like bring so many of their sort of trade secrets over, because to build the fab factory, and we're still way behind them, but we're catching up. There's literally 4 huge factories, each one of them as complicated as a nuclear reactor, that all
mhm,
need to work together. Like, one is cleaning air to the kind of precision that's like beyond anything else on Earth. One of them is cleaning water to the kind of precision that's beyond any other place on Earth. Then you have the actual place where you're making the wafers, which have to be just so clean. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's dust. Dust seems like what you imagine the problem, but any kind of micro precision thing off on anywhere across this thing, like one contaminated particle in the water, one contaminated particle in the air, one contaminated particle in the silicon, when it's like cleaned out, like you just can't get to 4 nanometer chips, and then you throw the whole thing away, and the whole
mhm.
the whole system is broken. So for us to compete at this level of precision is kind of what's shocking to me, and we're so far behind with nuclear right now.
Mhm.
I don't know if we're gonna make that big jump. Like I kept hoping fusion or something would sort of kick in, and we could sort of just jump a whole generation above nuclear, but just doesn't seem like that's gonna be happening right now.
Well, so interestingly, yeah, I mean, I looked into it. I have no idea how viable fusion is or isn't, and maybe we can get somebody on the podcast to talk to us, elucidate things for us a little bit. But um, so Sam Altman's most prominent energy company involvement is his role. He's a major investor in Helion Energy. So it's a nuclear fusion startup. He also invested in Exowatt, a startup focused on solar powered heat storage for data centers. So that makes sense. And was involved with Oklo, a company developing micro nuclear reactors. So,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like he's playing the board, right? That's like all three different timelines for when that technology will probably be relevant, but
yeah,
might as well be in the space in all three. God, he's gonna be so rich, man. You feel like he's just positioned himself so well in this world.
yeah. He's got his life extension company that apparently
Yeah, yeah, for
had a
sure.
breakthrough. Did you look into that at all?
No, what did they come through with?
Oh, I
I
have
mean,
no
I
idea.
have been. Oh yeah, but I have been doing some pretty neat life extension stuff, but I haven't heard of his companies. But
Yeah, I didn't
yeah.
look into it just because it was not quite AI, but it's something like I've always been interested in. I do want to look into it at some point, but
Okay,
what
you know
have you
what?
been doing?
I'll prep it for our next podcast too.
Okay, cool.
I'll give you some more breakdown in a future video, but it's mostly the protein folding and well, okay. If you want a quick my video that's going to come out soon. Turns out there's our immune system has this thing called a macrophage in it, and there's about 13 types of these macrophages. And thanks to AI, and this actually is the OpenAI model that was kind of similar to AlphaFold. They
Mhm.
modeled this scientific team was able to model the different macrophages and then compare them to people. And it turns out when you're older, you have a whole lot more of one type, and when you're a kid, a toddler, you have almost none of it. So
Hmm.
there's one type that sort of accumulates over life, and there's another type that you see a lot as a child and isn't there very much when you're older. um, and
Interesting.
we just never knew about this, but there's this sort of weird ratio of macrophage in your body, and that could cause a lot of inflammation, and then inflammation sort of leads to a lot of the aging process that starts to accelerate when you're older. But yeah, just thanks to this tool, these scientists now think they have this potential to remove this one type of macrophage from us as we're older, stop inflammation, and then greatly extend life. So it was pretty exciting news this week, and they were like, this could be doable. Now, getting all of that out of a human body is another problem, but the fact that we now
Hmm.
know what to do is kind of a step towards life extension, not reversal, but extension. Like that, we could seriously stop the aging process. So if you catch that in your 30s or 40s, it might take a lot longer before your body feels really kind of old. But
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just that's so fascinating. The thing is, it's like it's funny because like for a lot of my life, you've heard these potential, like it's always just around the corner. Like we're gonna have robots soon, we're gonna have AI soon, we're gonna have immortality soon, we're gonna have cure for cancer soon. And after a while, you kind of get excited, and then you get older, and you're like, it's all just a bunch of crap. You know what I mean? You just like, but you know what? AI did, it seemed like it did, like with the chat GPT, it turned the corner. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, whoa, like we might see some pretty incredible AI technology within our lifetimes. So I
Well, yeah,
wonder,
because everything that
mhm,
we did was it was always at human scale. I mean, there is a lot of humans on Earth, and there's a lot of billions of people working on different problems. Changes the world very fast, and the more they collaborate, it happens. But there's never quite been a moment where we invented an intelligence that can scale way beyond humans. We're always sort of limited by that linear factor of how much food goes into human bodies and how much
right.
human neurons need, and everybody needs sleep, and everybody is sort of constrained in some ways. So yeah, it does seem I don't know if humans would have got to figure out this like macrophage problem like any time in the next 10 or 20 years without AI. This is definitely a protein folding beyond human kind of poke around and kind of figure out what they do sort of scale problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope we see the what was the ChatGPT moment, but for life extension, like whether that's macrophages or whatever else, where it's like you look at it and you're like, oh wait, no, this is the real deal. It's not just some article and then you don't hear about it again. It's like no, like it's slowly rolling out. We're seeing results. Because I mean, for me, that was somewhere between ChatGPT and GPT-4, where I was like, okay, we've got it's live, it's coming
Yeah, like it's
online.
actually working now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then from there it was like scaling, which is, I mean, if you think about it, it's kind of obvious in like the fact that we're talking about these giant clusters, uh, whatever compute clusters. I mean, kind of obvious if you believed in the scaling laws, right?
No, this world, I mean, I do. I'm convinced this world is going to get so different. That's why I got to
Yeah.
just take it day by day. But let me change the topic over to consciousness, or at least micro movements. So I wanted to tell you about this is a new AI model. It is called See Me. And it's a pretty interesting data set that it was trained on. So it's a computer vision model, and it's been basically, the data set has been staring at people who are in comas for the entire time they're in the coma. And then when they come out of it, they go back in time and they say, hey, like, what were the signs that like could have clued us into somebody coming out of it? Maybe we can try to get some sort of a sense for small facial tweaks, the subtleties of movements, the subtleties of skin color, to figure out if somebody's going to basically be conscious, right? So
Hmm.
the theory is the tool should be eventually something that you could have on your iPhone or something, and you could point it at somebody who looks dead, and it might say, oh, they're actually still conscious, or they're about to wake up, or somebody who's in a coma, like they're showing signs of life. So like we need to start getting people in here right now, and they're not stuck in that position for too long. So yeah, this computer vision model is looking at facial tweaks mostly, so down to the pores, stuff that a doctor or a nurse wouldn't notice. A doctor or nurse might look at a patient and say, "Hey, I think they're I think they're still in the coma. Like I'm not like I touched their hand, nothing seems to happen. They don't seem to be moving at all." But there actually is detection that is just so small. They're micro movements that humans couldn't have seen before, and that does mean the patient is becoming more aware and more conscious. What are your thoughts? A tool like this, looking at us, seeing things that are beyond human sight. Where do you think that leads?
I mean, so, I mean, the biggest thing that I think maybe is underappreciated with AI is that it's like, it's not that just we can put words in, words out, or whatever, images in, images out. It's pretty much anything that can be like tokenized, can be made in these little bits of data. If there's enough of it, we can create a neural net and just see if it can predict some patterns. And that could be weather or traffic or words or poems or video or just anything, laws of physics. In this case, again, like, the data was their facial movements. And then sort of like the thing it was comparing it against is when they wake up, and then it saw a bunch of that and it was able to infer, right? So predict when that process started. It blows my mind that this can be applied to so many things that we can't even probably like think about right now in terms of
Yeah.
like just so many applications that are not obvious. Like I don't think this would have been obvious that people start waking up or coming online or whatever way before we see conscious signs.
Right. And like I don't know if it makes business sense, but theoretically,
Mhm.
everything, right? Like whether you're going to walk to your refrigerator and eat an apple, whether or not your dog is going to pee in the house, like whether or not any decision that you make is slowly going to start having some sort of micro tells, predictive cues. I mean, that is the art of lie detection that AI is
Mhm.
figuring out also.
Yeah, and that's a scary one because I mean, yeah, you can get in some issues with that. I guess recently they just talked about San Francisco thinking about potentially having robots, police robots that can kill, right? And then there was a backlash, and I guess they decided not to. Um,
Yeah. Just
and
because
I mean,
you can't walk that decision back. So yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be comfortable with that either.
it's weird. I mean, you can obviously see the benefits. You can save innocent lives. if there's some horrible situation, mass event situation, you could prevent those faster. Less
I
bad
mean,
things
I'm not.
happening.
I'm not opposed to like a police drone coming in and taking out an active shooter, right? But like, I just don't want that completely autonomous. Like, if somebody at a police station gets a signal that's like, hey, like this machine wants to stop an active shooter, I just want a human to like just look, you know what I mean, and say I authorize that.
Oh, so you're more worried about the autonomous thing, not the tyrannical regime taking over thing.
Well,
Because that's
yeah, you're
that,
right. You're right. They're both of concern now that I think
yeah,
about it.
and that's the thing is like you can obviously see the good, incredible use cases with using various AI technologies to reduce crime, reduce violent crime, protect innocent people. And then, of course, there could be just horrible, horrible stuff that you can't put back in the box once it's out of the box. So, yeah, it's an interesting sort of crossroads that we're at right now.
Yeah. All right, so may take your attention over to a new topic here. This is something I think you covered it or you know about it too, but just Zoom, the video conferencing tool,
Hmm.
they now have these AI companions. They can attend meetings for you. So they're avatars. They can look like you. You can take a few photos of yourself and train it so it looks like you. People can ask questions of it. It can reference your like a folder full of documents if you really want, or it can just sit there and sort of summarize the meeting for you. What does this lead to in the world? I mean, is it, do you need a meeting if everybody has an avatar that attends? Is that even a thing? Do you like the idea of somebody like Jeff Bezos being able to put his avatar in every single meeting and all 100,000 employees' meetings to kind of summarize up to him what's happening? Like, how does this change business? Is it a joke? Is it useful? What do you think about AI avatars attending meetings for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, first of all, before we continue, I'm going to have to ask you to ask a CAPTCHA test just to make sure you're not using this technology on the call. So we'll get to the bottom of this. Um, but I don't know. It seems like a joke to me because why? I mean, how's that different from like, why would you need an avatar of a person instead of like, hey, like, even if it's like the person's agent that has a different whatever avatar, different sort of whatever, or just a text based agent. Why does it need to be? That's weird to me because it's like, who are you fooling? Nobody, you know what I mean? You're not going to fool anybody. The only reason to me seems like if you wanted to trick somebody, which they do have some programs for that. This guy was saying how, so he's like on the couch in his pajamas and he's talking to like microphone on a Zoom call or whatever call he was on, but it appears like he's fully dressed in a tuxedo and tie and he's like in front of the camera. So it's his voice, his sort of lip movements, all of that stuff, but it's just the body appears like it's in front of the camera, whereas he's actually doing whatever.
Okay, so you're more in favor of it when it just makes you look more professional. Like you could put a tie on you, take a pimple off your face, but
well,
it
I'm
still
saying,
needs to be you talking behind the scenes.
I'm saying the only use case that I can think of that specific thing is to trick somebody, right? Like if you're
Oh, yeah, to
sick,
be somebody different.
yeah, you want to pretend to be somebody different or pretend like you're dressed and working instead of like on the beach or whatever. Otherwise, why would you need to have your representation there like that? Like that portion isn't because it's not like we're going to have a connection with that avatar or whatever. I would be much more comfortable with like an agent if it said, okay, I'm an agent for whatever you said, Jeff Bezos or whatever, right? So like, then I'm like, okay, I get it. This is an AI. It's gonna directly communicate to him. Why would that AI need to have his likeness?
Yeah,
That's
just to
where I don't
intimidate
get.
you, just to stay. Well, I don't think it does this yet, but in theory, I guess it could direct the meeting. Like Jeff Bezos might say to his avatar, hey, make sure that the company is more efficient, right? And every avatar
Mm.
in particular says during the meeting, like the Jeff Bezos avatar pops up and is like, hey, can we move this topic along here? It feels like we're wasting time. You guys are talking about your dinner last night. Like it's not on company time or something.
Yeah, I mean, I love that idea. Um, it just the likeness it doesn't have to be of the person. That seems like it's not
Yeah.
that doesn't add anything
I
that I
mean,
can think of.
in some case, it's just that what is Zoom? It's like a video conference company. They have one tool. It's a video conference tool. They want to
Yeah.
use AI. How else could they implement it? You know, it feels to
Yeah.
me a little bit just like a one-trick pony that wants to just shove AI into their system, and that's like they only have one trick, so they just do it. You know, not sure if it makes sense or not. Maybe for some people.
Yeah. I wonder what the sort of killer AI app is. It just seems like everything's on top of these large language models. So like there's a base model and everything is kind of on top of it. I don't know what's better than that. It feels like maybe everything's just going to be on some base layer that a few companies will own.
Yep.
So
All right, let's talk about uh, agents with money. So you are stepping into a world, and I am too, where we now have soon payment rails that agents can use. So I'm assuming something like ChatGPT that's connected to our credit card, and we say, go out and buy me a new lamp or something for my living room. Here's a photo of it, and it just decides, buys it, and ships it to you. How does this change the world?
yeah, so interesting. So we ran into the author of this paper, I believe, at the AI4 conference, right? Right?
Maybe. Oh, from AI News. Yeah, the person who curates the newsletter, but probably not the author. Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe
I
Alicia.
think
That's
that's
right.
her. That
Yeah,
looks
yeah.
like
Okay,
her.
sorry. Yeah, this stuff just comes through my newsletters, and I just click on it. But yeah, that's right. We have met
Oh
Alicia.
God. Okay,
I
gotcha. Yeah,
forgot.
I think we talked to her. Yeah, she was super friendly, super
Yeah,
nice.
and generally talking about the Gemini and all the stuff that came out. But yeah, she was great.
Yeah, they bought the domain AInews.com before
Dylan
AI was
too.
super fun and popular, and I was like, man, that's a good buy. I don't think it was that much. It was that expensive. I was like,
Yeah,
oh
Alicia
man, I
was
wish
great.
I wish I had done something like that. But
But yeah,
so the
here's the official Google payment
yeah, so
article.
there's two things behind this that are very interesting to me. Because yeah, first of all, there's Google, Coinbase. They're forming some sort of a agentic payments protocol. Then there's A2A, agent to agent protocol. And then there's also the marketplaces. And the marketplaces are something that I'm like very fascinated in because it sounds like similar to how you have Google, you type in your what you're looking for and you find a website and then you can find a phone number and then call the person, right? You can think of it as that as a sort of marketplace where everybody has services and you have people, users browsing it to find services. Now, in the future, we can imagine that existing, but completely operated by agents. So if you have a business, you might have a few agents out there doing some work for you. You, as the user, might send out your agents to find various services that you need or find the information that you need. And of course, a lot of these agentic payment protocols, whatever, they're going to allow that to happen seamlessly. So if, let's say, the example that they gave, that Coinbase gave, I think is like if you're trying to schedule an event somewhere, right? So you tell your agent that, so it goes and it gets the weather report for that area from whoever supplies the weather report. It might be a fraction of a penny, right? So some minor micro payment, but you might want to know the weather, right? It might be easier for you to just spend that 1/10 of a penny to just get the weather information for that day. And then it does a bunch of other checks and it books your event or whatever, right? Invites the other people. So it does all those things for you and interacts with whatever services you need. And it's pretty obvious to me that if they build that, you know, there's going to be a lot of money potential, a lot of opportunity in those things because it's like the app store all over again, but probably a lot bigger. It's like the internet all over again, right? Like Google or whatever, or Amazon, or I mean, the scale for this thing could be pretty massive. And so I think Google is skating to where the puck is going because they're trying to build that. Because if AI starts decreasing how much time we spend sort of on Google online, what's going to replace it? It's some sort of an agentic marketplace like that. Does that make sense? Do you think,
Yeah.
or is there,
Well,
what do you think about that?
no, I think you're completely right. The one thing that would stop it is sort of the walled gardens, and it seems like they addressed it. I mean, the 60 partners that Google unveiled with the protocol were the biggest players I could imagine, right? MasterCard was in there, American Express, PayPal, Coinbase. Was it Visa? Yeah, I don't know if Visa was in there. I feel like that's one of the holdouts. But yeah, it's enough that I feel like you can tip the ecosystem into real people using it in real ways. And that's something it felt like crypto never even quite nailed down.
Mhm.
So yeah, it seems like a little bit closer, and they have strategic reason for this. Like Gemini, as powerful as Gemini is, the frontier models also need to start doing things. The next kind of competition isn't just in how smart Grok or Gemini or GPT are. It's how useful they are to the average person. And this is going to be the next battle. Is the Microsoft ecosystem going to incorporate this in a way? Is the Google ecosystem going to incorporate this in a way where people are actually changing their calendars, buying products, calling Ubers, getting places, doing things, going to events? Um, and it does feel like it's the best kind of way forward. The rails seem like they're going to work to me. I felt like it was a pretty good strategic move.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I stopped doing research on Google maybe almost completely for most things. I go to, at this point, GPT-5 Pro, right? I type in detail what I want. It takes 5 to 10 minutes, right? But it goes to those websites, it does all that stuff, and then it answers my specific question, right? So if like I want some supplements with this specific, ultra specific, whatever I want, right? It will search for that. If I wanted like specific conditions, like if I'm not sleeping, here's everything about me, figure out why I'm not sleeping right or whatever, right? It will do that. And oftentimes it finds these little very interesting things that would have taken hours of research. So I'm already seeing a lot of my browsing habits change. Like already, instead of spending hours
Yeah.
researching something, I'm outsourcing it to an agent. So that's not the future, that's now. So I can certainly see in X number of years that I will be also giving it tasks to do, right? So I don't know.
Coming soon. Okay, so I also wanted to get your opinion on these three main views of the future of AI. So this is from Less Wrong. So it's a place where they're very critical of AI. So it's closer to a doomer type website or blog community. This Eliezer Yudkowsky is here. And when it comes to ways that things could go wrong, there is sort of three categories. So independent of the risk that you think it is. So you might be very optimistic in general and say there's only, a 1% chance that things go wrong. But if you dive into that 1% and you kind of think about them, I wanted to kind of get a sense for how do you, which one of these camps do you sort of fall into? And maybe you could kind of debate what makes sense. So there's the dominance doctrine, and this predicts that kind of the first actor to develop will kind of run away with things. So this would be if Elon is just an inch ahead, it becomes a foot ahead, it becomes a mile ahead. And we end up with sort of one ASI that is so far ahead that it can also strategically hinder all of the other competitors. And it sort of ends up being whoever the winner is. Is it maybe it's Meta, maybe it's China, maybe it's OpenAI. And then there's the extinction doctrine, which predicts that humanity will just sort of lose control over ASI and it will result in kind of like you let the cat out of the bag, it becomes sort of an entity that's beyond humans and we don't really think about it anymore. And then there's the replacement doctrine, which assumes that AI development will sort of plateau soon. ASI will not develop in the near future, and expectations about effects of weaker AI are much more fragmented. And we end up with just kind of a weird, multipolar, destabilized kind of economy. Do you kind of gravitate towards one, or what does your gut instinct sort of say kind of plays out as these do become more powerful?
Yeah, I mean, my gut instinct is that the dominance doctrine is sort of the most likely one. Um, I think the big question is like, is there such a thing? Can we develop such a thing as super intelligence? Like that's not guaranteed, obviously, right? So we might find like, oh, there's like this obvious wall past which we can't get, and we don't know of any workaround. It just stops scaling, stops working. I guess that's kind of like the replacement doctrine to where it gets to a certain point, but doesn't get to super intelligence. I mean, that's probably the safest sort of world to live in, right? Right, because it will have automation, will have some accelerated scientific economic progress, but we're
You
not
saying
going to have.
the replacement doctrine's kind of the best because it sort of plateaus and we sort of just replace things we don't
Well, I'm
like
saying
to
that's the
do, essentially?
safest.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know about the best, but it's certainly the safest. Like the I,
Yeah,
creating
that makes
super
sense.
intelligence is obviously obviously
Yeah.
dangerous. So that in a situation where we can't, for whatever reason, create one, obviously everything's a lot safer. There's going to be other concerns, but that's sort of we get the best of automation without anything like godlike being summoned. So certainly, I don't know best or not, but certainly
Right.
safest.
Safest.
Yeah, with the dominance doctrine definitely makes a lot of sense to me because I mean we're already seeing with Alpha Evolve and stuff like that with the Darwin Gödel machine, right? Sakana AI, like this thing is able to do some basic self improvement, and eventually, if that continues, they keep building bigger centers like they're talking about, right? Assuming that it keeps scaling, keeps getting better at some point, it's going to start being able to improve itself eventually better than humans. And that's what people are worried about, that kind of like intelligence explosion. Um, it- Whether or not that's going to happen, we're just saying like, if that's where we're heading, then that's why there's a race to ASI, right? Because getting there 1 month earlier creates this sort of compounding effect
Right, and it
to
could
where,
be a
yep,
minute or an hour too.
yeah,
So yeah, I would like, and when you're thinking about these things, putting them in what politicians believe and what the culture believes about these three doctrines does change a lot of kind of how we build that future. Because yes, if the dominance doctrine is what Elon and Sam and Trump all believe, then having one employee take 1 day off might be the difference between you and the other companies, right? So you're like, hey, just throw as much money as possible at it, like $1 billion for somebody's salary is not a problem. Like any but they just should have no days off. They should work as hard as possible because it's a winner take all situation. Um, and then if you think more about the replacement doctrine, what you're kind of thinking is, well, all right, there's just this fragmented world, and each kind of narrow AI needs to be sort of implemented in ways that make sense. And we need to like kind of constantly be thinking about when are they so capable that we don't need employees and how do we tax that money to like help, offset or whatever kind of slow replacement system you can put in there. But, it happens it kind of happens slowly day by day and then kind of seems to happen all at once as the technology just sort of glues together towards the end. But
yeah.
and then
The
the extinction one is more just like we just have a new god and whatever just pray that it takes care of us. So
Yeah, and it's funny how dominance and the extinction kind of play off against each other because if it's a race, it might be a race to extinction. We can't. So a lot of the people in the AI safety space, um, it's interesting because like the more you like study this stuff, I mean, you listen. Leon Shapiro had an interview with Eliezer Yudkowsky. It was an interesting read, and a lot of people in the space we talked to, a researcher from News Research, he's saying even though he might not agree with everything Eliezer says, he thinks it should be required reading for everybody. And I kind of tend to agree with that because here's somebody that really took time to think everything through and had a lot of very great sort of um, cons- points and concerns about how things are going to happen. And we're literally seeing that happen sort of unfold right now. You know what I mean? Like we're
yeah,
seeing the stuff that he was concerned about 20 years ago, recently Apollo Research and OpenAI, like, yeah, these models, they tend to lie
yeah.
and they tend to
Well,
scheme. And,
it's also funny because because we did that interview with Nick Bostrom and I went back and listened to the original book, Superintelligence, which is, a decade old now. And I remember I was thinking to myself what my life was like the first time I read it and how I thought about the future. And so many things in that book were like, well, it imagined some kind of company like DeepMind coming up with ASI secretly in the R&D department, not telling many people in the world about it except the CEO, and then them strategically making decisions to never let it touch the internet, like don't put it out there, don't, train it on all of this data that people are aware of. And I'm just thinking like how different the world ended up. Like by the time we got to this sort of technology, it's so much more in everybody's pocket. The world's so different now. All these kind of things that seemed like they made sense to protect us are just they were built for the wrong environment, you know?
Yeah. Have you seen Oppenheimer? Like the
No,
D-Day
I
or
should.
not D-Day. I
The
don't want
movie.
to get tell you what, let me look something up just because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I do want to make one point. But tell me about this next thing you're talking
Okay.
about.
Yeah. So I wanted to tell you about this kind of interesting understanding that science now has of how decisions are made in mice, because I think it kind of is going to explain a little bit of why they call AI models black boxes. Like we can't really figure out what's going on. But so for the first time, scientists have recorded how a decision was made inside of an entire mouse brain. So there were 700 brain implants put directly onto the brain. So the kind of like Neuralink, how they go under the skull, they put it directly on the mouse's brain. They tracked the activity of 620,000 neurons, which is like the most we've done for a full decision making before. And that's about 95% of the mouse brain. So almost the entire brain, almost all the neurons at a high resolution, and the most implants ever, highest resolution recording. And the map showed how different regions of the mouse's brain worked together when it was faced with tough choices in different tasks. And it talks about how the higher brain regions, their sensors across vision and intelligence experience fluctuate so rapidly that we can't make a prediction. Like there's doesn't seem like there's going to be the big point is basically it doesn't seem like there's going to be any point in a brain where we could ever say the mouse is going to make this decision. Like it just goes through so many variations that change at all points, and it makes me think that we're not going to ever have the ability to truly know what a decision out of a human, out of a AI system is ever going to be. It's basically pointing towards, you know, a lot of difficulties in having any kind of confidence that a system is going to be like 100% safe or it's going to be 100% aligned. Um, but yeah, I was curious, what do you think about how brain regions collaborate in such sort of unpredictable ways? What does
Yeah,
that mean for AI and intelligence?
it's very interesting. I mean, for some reason my mind went to. So I guess there's a channel where a person part of the AI safety community kind of like talks about the AI risks, and I think there's some people in his comments that tend to argue with him and present all sorts of like theories for why that will never happen. One of them is they reference the Penrose theory that the calculations that our brains do, they don't happen kind of in the classical sort of universe, that there's some sort of a um I'm blanking on the thing. It's you know what I'm talking about. Penrose and the
Try to think.
you
Nothing's
were the one that
clicking.
kind of explained portions of it to me. There were I'm blanking on the word. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember either. Yeah, I'll add one more while you're looking that
Yeah.
up. I'll add one more comment to this too. Is the other thing isn't just that it's unpredictable, but it's also that what the mouse actually sees, like its actual like raw perceptions of what it ranks in its own head to make a decision, are being colored by what it's learned before, by to like such an extent that it's hard for we don't know where everything in the mouse's experience in life has been stored. So we also don't have a good baseline of where everything comes from, right? Like if you take the whole internet and you digest it into an like an LLM, it's not like I think that anybody has an understanding of where a certain blog from a certain website is in that memory. It's been so generalized,
Hmm.
that it's not, there's no place for it. Therefore, you can't even start at a location and then go to another location to see what the outcome's going to be.
Interesting. Yeah, that kind of reminds me of what Anthropic's doing with their research. But no, so I apologize. So Roger Penrose, so he had this theory that some part of consciousness arises from quantum processes within the brain,
Oh, that one, yeah.
and so our ability to think and stuff like that transcends formal logic. Now this wasn't, it was kind of
Yeah,
dismissed
most
by
people
us.
think he's crazy, right? But he's also Roger Penrose, so we're like, we got to listen.
Yeah, well, yeah. So a lot of people are saying like, we'll never achieve super intelligence because it doesn't have these abilities. So it's funny that that's sort of used as a argument against that. Um, but it would be interesting if we could never fully map what's happening in there. Like there was just impossible with any technology to figure out how everything fully works. Like we couldn't answer the question of consciousness or intelligence or anything else like that. Anthropic's working on their ability to figure out which neurons encode which information. So that whole Golden Gate Claude, that was by turning up a certain feature, which is like a cluster of neurons, and all of a sudden it can't help but talk about, it's a Golden Gate bridge and Golden Gate bridge this and that. Same thing for, how much glazing it does, how much of a suck up it is. If you turn a certain feature up, it becomes much more like, oh, you're right, you're brilliant, thank you for that. So we're able to figure out how it sort of maps onto certain functions. And what Dario Amodei is saying is like, if you think about it, it just does it in a way that's the most sort of efficient and information dense. Never have we never have we asked it to make it map in a way that would make sense to us. There was not an evolutionary pressure for it to be easily understood. It was just, can you just pack all that information in the space provided? But they could unpack all that stuff, and a lot of the different information is packed onto the same clusters. So they were saying something like the color blue and punk rock for some reason are layered on the same sort of cluster. Um, so
Yeah,
maybe, yeah.
I couldn't emphasize what you're saying enough. Like if there's even one message that you could, if you really had just one moment with all the leaders of the world to explain to them, it's that it could be done at huge cost to have one feature mapped onto one neuron for a huge model that the whole world used, and that would be highly predictable. But when you're
Mm-hmm.
densely compacting information, like a neural net is a lot like a compressed version of the internet. It just has multiple neurons that with various weights in combination are representing different features. They're not spread out. So that's why those autoencoders that Anthropic's using are powerful, but you know, that's not going to be an efficient way to build a model. That's not going to make business sense for anybody who just wants to get something done. But the explainability is there. And that might, if this is such a technology that the whole world is going to be transformed from it, and all the governments and people wanted to build a model that way, that would be the safest way to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And it sounds like there's no reason why. Well, so there's no reason why we can't have like one cluster of neurons mapped for one specific process, so it's easy to see, other than like the efficiency, how compact you can get that information in there. And it does seem like neural nets, they form certain mental models, just kind of like what we do, right? Similar to how animals do it, right? So we observe a certain situation enough, and we kind of have this idea in our head that we might not even be conscious of. Um, and we know through like a lot of psychological studies that we're unconscious of a lot of our thinking, how it happens, right? You ask a person how they came to a certain decision, they might not be able to tell you, but looking from the outside, it's obvious. I mean, they've had those studies where they kind of like gave them hints, for one group of people and not for the other. But the group that they had hints, they were much more likely to solve the puzzle, but they could never sort of trace their thinking back to that hint that they were given. So
Hmm.
it kind of gets in there, some in the subconscious mind somehow, and we're able to use that information, but we can't vocalize it, or we can't consciously say it. So maybe it's the same thing for mice, and maybe it's the same thing for these, neural nets that we create. I mean, it's fascinating because I feel like this could also help us learn more about how our brains work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and because we have 81 billion neurons, I think, in the human brain. Yeah, we're not going to have anything like an autoencoder. Everything's multivariable. But yeah, but It would be pretty wild. Like if the world got together and we built just one super brain and it was owned by the world and it had tens and hundreds of trillions of neurons in it and each one was a feature, so there would be bad features. We could build like essentially a library that say what is bad, and we'd all
Mhm.
have to get together and define it. Well, like bad is when a machine lies to steal from you,
Yep.
but if it creatively emphasizes your Etsy collection, that's not lying, that's creativity. And then we could just map all the clusters that we think are bad and turn them to zero and hopefully truly understand that it can't do that because we've turned down those neurons completely. We might have at least one system that's controllable. I don't even know if I call it safe, but at least it would be like predictable and
Mhm.
controllable. And it
Mhm.
would be in some way mechanical and programmable, unlike a normal neural net with still all the intelligence. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. But yeah, I want to get your thoughts on what do you think of this nested loop of intelligence? Just looking at the large history of the universe, we had nothing, and then billions of years ago, about 5 billion years ago, there was sort of a memory of RNA, and it turned into like the evolution of biology, where you would actually keep DNA generation after generation and make slow improvements based on survival. We kind of went through this other evolution where there's culture, where you can be born into, a human hunter and gatherer kind of society, and you can actually just learn from your elders, and they can teach you things faster and make mistakes in one lifetime. And now we're sort of getting to this thing that the author is calling AI evolution. The author being Eduardo Alvarez here, and this is something that would happen at such a speed the world's never really seen it before. Um, yeah, what do you think about this graph? Does it resonate with you? What are the implications if you do believe this is how things are moving?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing to think about. Yeah, it's interesting too how you said like it started with nothing and then like a memory formed being like DNA, RNA. Like that's a very interesting thing. Yeah, because I mean it's saving data or I guess you can think about it like saving some not designs but
Yeah,
saving
something
some
was
data.
persistent, like
Yeah.
persistency
So through
existed.
generations it could continue, which is yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting way to think of it as oh like a save game function was
Yeah.
emerged somehow. So that's an interesting way. Yeah. No, but I mean the first thing as you're describing it, I'm like, well, it seems to me that the next obvious thing is like kind of the evolution, like a simulation. So if we're able to create simulations, we're able to kind of like really get the next sort of nested loop and to kick off another biological evolution. You know what I mean? Potentially kick starting this process all over again. And then, of course, the next question is, oh, but what's around that process? Are we already within another nested loop of this process? Um, do you know what I mean? Like, is it possible that this is an infinite loop? Because I mean, if we start creating lifelike simulations of the world, we can potentially recreate evolution RNA, RNA and little life forms forming. And then maybe as they grow over billions of years, they start resembling something that has intelligence. And at that point, we got to figure out if they're conscious or not. Like maybe that emerges somehow too. Um, and if you think about it, like with our race to ramp up compute, I mean, certainly it seems like we're going to have the necessary resources to run stuff like that potentially, right? Um, the question is going to be very interesting to think about. Like, okay, then how does one determine if we're sort of in the base layer, in the base reality or not? So that's all I see when I'm looking at this image.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's just that scale. Like, I mean, you think, I've always sort of struggled because I sort of have a sense of a month or a year or even a human lifetime, but I just get so lost, even when I try to think about what it was like in the 1500s or like close to zero on the calendar, 10,000 years ago with the beginning of farming, a million years ago with like multiple Homo sapien or, Homo genius out there, like the Devonans or the Denisovans or whatever they're called in the Neanderthal. And like, they all were pretty smart, but smart in a little bit different ways than us, and had fire and tool use, and then just how slow. Like when I think about dinosaurs and I think about the Cambrian explosion, the Cambrian explosion is still slow as hell compared to what we feel, because DNA just needed an entire generation. And then when I see simulations done on like an NVIDIA cluster and I see those, some sort of 3D character just learning to fall over and walk and solve a problem, like remember we talked about when you watch those original hide and seek players
Yeah.
with OpenAI's Playground, just to me, that's just so fast. Like that's just evolution, just so fast, so incredibly fast that it makes me wonder what it leads to.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. And the fact that we can there seems to be some pattern to it or some sort of underlying something, like the fact that, if AlphaFold seems to imply that there's some I mean, there's obviously has to be some pattern or something to where this thing can predict other proteins and how they're folding. That's not the only, there's other models like that out there.
Uh-huh.
So that suggests that it's not random, that there's some pattern that can be identified and replicated with how everything forms. And I mean, Demis, that's what he said, this idea of a computational universe. I mean, certainly if you're creating something that's like a simulation, it would run on a computer. It would have to follow some laws. It would have to be kind of digital, so to speak. Some minimum sort of, I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah, it's just a wild thing to think about because seems like we're approaching a time when we might be able to launch that. And that's going to, I think, spark a whole set of questions about what is life, consciousness, and whatever. I mean, if we're able to create something that has intelligence within a simulation and that simulation sort of continues expanding, I mean, there's a million applications for that. What applications are not safe? Like, what happens if a simulation creates super intelligence? Are we safe from it? You know what I mean? Have you ever
Yeah,
thought
I
about
don't
that?
know. No, I haven't actually. Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be. I mean, I am troubled by the idea that I'm not going to feel safe in the future. This is probably the safest I'm ever going to feel. For now, like, not like I feel in danger today or anything, but it is just going to be wild when humanoid robots are walking around and simulations are kind of, when I'm looking them sort of in the eye and thinking, oh, wow, you're like processing me and my face, and you know if I'm conscious, you know how many pores are on my head, you
Mhm.
know a million billion other people that you've interacted with, and you're learning from all of them in a way I never could. And I just hope you're here to deliver that package and then head on out, and it just like, okay, I'll just assume. But who knows? That evolution is happening so fast in places where I can't see it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. What if, yeah, and like what if everything becomes predictable to where this idea where they're like, oh, like we can basically predict what you're thinking based on like all these factors. If there's some chip and like if with the mouse, like what if eventually we find that everything is predictable and then we're able to extrapolate that to the human brains? Like would you be disappointed if you realized that you don't have as much free will as you thought?
Yeah, well, I've mostly given up on the thought that I have free will, so I mean, I don't love that, but yeah, I guess when I have actual evidence, when a robot's like, I'm like, hey, guess what I invented? And it's like, oh, yeah, I already know, but tell me
Yeah.
anyway. Like, I'm here to make you feel good. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, well, I invented this. And he's like, oh, cool, all right, I guess I'll just live, like, what else am I going to do? Like, be upset about it? It's just part of evolution, and we are where we are in the chain.
Well, and that's what Nick Bostrom is talking about. Like maybe we should leave some things alone to be
Mm-hmm.
discovered by humans. Nothing important, like, but just maybe some places in the ocean that somebody can go
That's
down
right.
and
I forgot about that. Yeah, just so we can at least like all get together and be like, "Hey, let's go
yeah,
scuba
we did
diving and
it,
document
humans.
something." It's just pathetic. But you know what? Like, you see a dog solve a little maze, you're so excited. I guess
Yeah,
it'll be like that. Like,
you're
oh,
so
good for
excited for it.
you. Not that I couldn't solve it, but it's fun to see you do it. It makes me happy. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, thanks for spending some time. That's all I got for my kind of updates. Unless there's anything else you want to throw out there.
No, that's it. We covered so much. This was a lot of fun. I think we did such a great sort of a tour of everything that was happening. And we got a few really cool interviews coming up, including potentially with some people from Apollo Research. So we can dive
Yeah,
into,
I
AI
saw that
safety.
email coming in. That's exciting.
Very, very excited about that because, man, they just published incredible research. They work closely with OpenAI. So look out for that and let us know how you enjoyed this episode. A brand new format that we want to try out, a little bit more informal. So hopefully it wasn't too annoying, but
Yeah, let us
hopefully
know.
people enjoyed it. Yeah, let us know in the comments and check out Dylan's channel. We'll link everything below. Make sure you're subscribed. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.
See ya.